Commission meeting of December 2nd, 2021.
21, yes.
In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and is being broadcast over the public access cable channel. This meeting is being conducted hybrid and will be recorded and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours of our meeting. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. From a computer, please use this link, https://us02web.zoom.us/j/797-337-0353, or call in with the toll-free number 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID is 792-737-0353. We are set to go. Are there any public or board comments before we let Wola take over? No. All right, we're good. The floor is yours, folks.
Karen?
Great.
Could you let me in?
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
Recording in progress.
We're good.
Are we good?
Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for having us here tonight. We're really excited to be kicking off the concept design project for Marshall Park. My name is Catherine Ostermeyer. I'm here from WOLA. This is my fellow principal, Emily Wright, also from WOLA, and Nick Betts from Meridian Engineering. So we appreciate your time. In terms of this evening, we thought we would first run through a sort of quick visioning exercise so that we can start getting your input and understanding your goals for the park, as well as some of your concerns, because I think those are both equally valuable. We'll also be interested in hearing any information that you can think of that may not have been included in the RFP that you think is important for us to know as we undertake our site analysis process. So this is really more of a listening session for us. We do have some questions, but it's really a chance for you to let us know the things that we might not otherwise. We'll go over some of our questions, and then I know that the public is here and also on Zoom, so we're happy to answer any questions or take any comments and include those from the general public. And then last, we'll go over some next steps. Next meeting dates and how we anticipate the process kind of unfolding so that we can make any adjustments that are needed and make sure that we're all on the same page. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually, it's something that it's like an opportunities, we call it now and future. So thinking about the things that you like about Marshall Park now and the things that you want to like about it in the future. And it's sort of it's a first instinct response exercise where we ask one question and then you all have 4 stickies in colors that correspond to questions. So just writing down that first thought that you have, 1 or 2 sentences, it doesn't have to be a paragraph. And for the first question we have today is, what is it about Marshall Park that's special to you today? What's that one thing that makes it special to you? And then I'll collect them and put them up. Oh, or Emily. Thanks, Em.
I won.
Yes, it's a speed round at the end.
Say it again.
And this is always a good exercise because there are so many different perspectives, so starting to hear what other folks are saying as well can be helpful for us and also for the commission. There we go.
Next question is.
All right. So what we've got here is proximity to the center of town to make it easy for folks to gather. Also the history of the park and how it fits into the neighborhood. Open space in town center. And it's my hood as a child. Many happy and fun days and events growing up.
Guess who that was?
Karen. All right. So let's move on to the next question. And that is, what would you like to change the most about Marshall Park? What's that one thing that you could change to improve it?
Beach.
Didn't realize we were
Not
still
by much.
racing.
All right. So more open space and multi-purpose fields with better pond access, accessibility and a diversity of uses, more generational and spaces for community gatherings, and more activities aside from baseball and softball. All right. Let's see here. So it seems like there's a desire for community gathering and an accessibility and kind of a more varied series of uses with the park. And that's definitely something that will be helpful for us as we're going through this. The next question: what worries you about the future of Marshall Park? Are there any things that concern you, or even about the design or the future of it?
It's a tough one. Tough one for me because I don't see it going away.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't even have to be going away, but just,
Mm.
We're a well-balanced
I
team.
would-
How's that?
Karen, you better win next time.
Yeah, Karen, speed it up next time.
I'm thinking for a second.
Mhm.
My writing is terrible.
It's legible.
Barely.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm last again.
No, no.
No, I beat her. Yes.
Nothing else. We had fun competing against
You
each
do.
other.
Look what I started.
You did.
Okay. So for these sort of concerns going forward, an overgrowth of vegetation at the pond, I worry that less use will result in becoming obsolete and eventually sold, a lack of upkeep after the renovation, and maintenance, safety of visitors and neighbors bringing in too much. So for that last one, is that sort of too much activity, or?
So right now we're baseball, we're softball, and
Right.
sometimes it's hard for me to envision all kinds of things there and how to incorporate it all so that it makes sense and it's used and we're not putting our neighbors in a spot where they turn around and don't like the fact that we've just done all this work on this great park and are complaining. So yeah, it was
So,
Sort of my thought
Unfortunately,
process.
we're in a different era because growing up in that neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
that was the center of all many
okay,
community activities there was on the school property as there is this now. But there was the annual bonfire, there were a number of annual events that were held actually right at the park.
Before my time.
Before your
Yeah,
time.
definitely. Been around way too long.
and do those activities, it's not as programmed anymore, or there's not space for them, or?
The bonfire was the biggest thing there, and it's problematic for a lot of reasons. The last time they had it at Marshall Park was the first time they had a galvanized fence around the upper ball field, and they melted the galvanized coating off of the fence. That was the last time they had it there.
Got it, okay, yep.
But, I hope we can bring back community events. The other issue is that, the fields, as you know, are immaculately maintained.
Yes.
Which they weren't that way before, but they could still take a beating with a weekend event and still be nice and green and not trampled.
Okay. And so the fields as they are now, does their sort of immaculate maintenance preclude them from being used for events?
I wouldn't
I'm not
say-
qualified to answer
Okay,
that properly.
No, I think maybe Dave was talking about more of large crowds right on the field.
Okay,
But I don't think that would be a problem. I mean,
And I think the preference in town is to bring those types of events onto the school property up here in the center of town anyway.
okay. And so,
I think the increase I'm looking for is the passive recreation part of it, which won't bring huge crowds at any one given time unless there's some type of a special treasure hunt event or something like that.
okay, so you're thinking more for the sort of old school property, that's where the old primary school, that's where those sort of larger user-intensive events would be?
That's in my head, there or
Yeah.
at the actual, school
Actual school,
properties now,
okay.
because they've got more space there.
The nature of the existing layout of Marshall Park doesn't lend itself to mass gathering because it is primarily a baseball field,
Yeah.
so there's fencing around each section of open space. So
Got
that
it,
doesn't lend itself always to
large
larger
gatherings.
scale.
Right.
And I'm sure we'll get to it at some point in the discussion, but the reasoning on the location of the original bathrooms was that the 90-foot diamond was the field that was built when that park was created, so it was
Okay.
very convenient to the park. The park has now, as you know, expanded, so
Yes.
that location isn't probably the most central.
Okay. So we had maintenance, safety of visitors and neighbors, bringing in too much. So there is concern that less use, is that if it's not sort of invested in, or?
yeah, so, right now it's almost exclusively used for baseball and softball. And the Little League in town has done a good job keeping enrollment, but as we've seen, there are trends of different sports that are coming up. And if over time there is less activity around baseball and softball, and these other sports that are becoming more popular and more common, we wouldn't have what to offer with the current setting.
Okay.
So that's where less use, even if it's for similar uses, there it's happening now.
Okay.
If I could expand on that a little bit more, I think what we're looking for is advice as to whether multi-use fields are appropriate for that property. I question that. And we don't have room to expand much, as I'm sure Meridian will find. We've got so many wetlands on that property that our hands are tied on expansion of open space.
Okay. And then, for our last question, what would make this a successful project for you?
So close.
Wow, Karen won.
I've only been friends with her for 17 years, so.
Quite phrased how I want to phrase it, but that's okay.
Can't think of the noun. This is horrible.
Yeah.
Write faster, Dave.
I'm writing a book on this one.
He turned it over. He's up to the back
Oh, I
side.
could have.
I hope you can read it. I really scribbled that one. Oops, sorry, I stuck it to the table, too.
There we go.
Making her work.
Got it. All right. So, what would make this a successful project for you? A park that is multi-use while maintaining open space, pond, wooded area, etc. Knowing that when I go to the park, there will be people there using it regularly due to a wider amount of offerings. A park that brings in people just looking for things to do and for it to have this small town feel. And expanding community uses, especially for passive adult recreation and documentation of historically significant locations in the park. Yeah. So, does anybody want to, elaborate on what they wrote a little more?
I will on mine. So
Yeah.
I was the one that mentioned the small town feel.
Mhm.
So when I go by Marshall, even though I don't love it right now because I think it doesn't offer enough, I like the fact that it fits the community. I wouldn't be wanting to see something that everything was flattened and it was, multiple fields. I would like to see something that fits the community, and especially where the location is in the center of town, while still being able to offer some of the more current amenities that people are looking for.
So retaining character but adding amenity.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had similar thoughts. That's, I mean, yours is a little more eloquent than mine was, but yeah, just like I live right around the corner from the park now, and I drive by it on a regular basis, and it's not often that I see, out of sports season, baseball, softball, so forth, summer leagues. There's not a lot of activity at Marsh. So I'd like knowing that we've succeeded will mean when I go by, there's kids,
Activity.
families, adults walking trails,
Yeah.
playing basketball, things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to add something, because, we were the Parks Commission. One could say, why don't you just run programs there? It's just the facilities, the state of the park doesn't allow us to do that. So it's, we're looking to, I think that's a common feeling that, through this process, we'll be able to develop a park that then we can use for some of our programs.
Okay, great. And that's something that I think we're hoping to touch on with you coming up. Dave?
I pretty much agree with that. The DPW's director's questions during the
Yes.
interviews, he was very particular about that item.
Yes.
We really had a tough situation late summer with some programming that was over there, and it caused a lot of problems because the facilities were no longer there. Permanent facilities were no longer there.
Okay.
So until we get permanent facilities back there, we're not going to see the programming that this commission hopes to see grow, be offered at Marshall Park, which is, our property versus borrowing the school grounds properties for the activities.
Okay. And that by facilities, restroom facilities, drinking fountains?
Basically, it's the restroom facilities that, and cover from, protection from the weather, which with the cabanas or whatever we end up with there, that will help with that issue also.
Okay.
And I think we're all in agreement that the adult passive uses are what's really have been allowed to deteriorate at the park, let me put it that way. The focus has been on the playing fields, and that's it. As you can see, everything around it is all grown up. The basketball courts are in disarray. By the way, those were tennis courts when I was a kid.
They were tennis courts. Okay.
You can still see the paint on them.
I noticed Meridian went out and did some significant orthophotography yesterday with their drone, and we got a really good view of the paint on those courts.
Yeah.
So they're basketball courts now, and were tennis courts, or
Tennis
okay,
courts, when I
great.
was a kid, yeah. I
They're
don't
really
know.
not used now. The only
Right,
thing that's
it's-
used, like, you know, if some kids know that they're there, they'll go down to them. But it's not something that.
Yep, they definitely seem
actively need.
isolated.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And they were used extensively in the 50s, 60s, and very early 70s until they really got deteriorated.
Okay. Yeah.
And then at some point, I think we'll hopefully talk about what we'd like to see added to the park if they fit. And I've got a whole list of things for that. I don't know when you'll be ready for those.
Great. Well, we're doing site analysis, but we're always ready for ideas. Yeah. So in terms of, let's just circle back because we didn't really have a chance to talk extensively about these first two. So what about Marshall Park as it is today makes it special to you? And the history of the park and how it fits into the neighborhood, proximity to the center of town, open space in the center of town, make it easy for folks to gather, and it's my hood as a child, many happy and fun days and events. So if anyone wants to just give a little more information on your responses and thoughts.
So I think there's some really neat features down there. Although I think some of the ideas that have popped up lately are not something that I would have thought of. I think that the fact that there is an underground bunker area there is pretty cool. It's not something that I hear very often. I think that there's so many diverse areas within that park that, you know, when I go there, the first thing, I've sort of started to train my mind to go there and not think immediately of baseball and softball, but to think of everything else that's down there, including the pond. Every time I drive by the pond, I'm like, that's ours, you know, and it's just something that's not utilized to its, you know, best advantage. But when I look at that pond, think to myself, that's part of what gives it that small town charm character that would be great to be able to, you know, preserve. And you know, again, it's one of those, I don't go into the park and think that it's been cleared and it's all like recreational fields where, you know, thousands of kids come. I like the fact that it doesn't have that. I like that it sort of like tucked in the woods a little bit. Maybe it'd be nice if it was a little bit more open, so security is always a concern for me, especially in this day and age. So, but I do like that feeling of pulling in through the trees, you know, that sort of thing.
Hopefully we'll have some public involved in one of these meetings going forward. I see we have one member of the public that has arrived, and I was surprised he wasn't here sooner, but that's great that he's here. But one of the comments I want to make is, and it may be a challenge, but it doesn't show real well now because it's been allowed to grow in with organic matter and grass, but the perimeter track of the 90-foot diamond, that was the track for Lunenburg. All school events, track events were held there. It's a cinder track. There is a lot of interest with people that I've spoken to have it remain a cinder track if the track is going to stay.
That's sort of
But it
around
may be a
here,
challenge
right?
to,
Yeah.
yep.
Yep, okay.
And it's 1/8 of a mile, plus it has a 100-yard dash straight away in front of where the old bathrooms used to be.
And that's over here, right?
It's over on that side,
Okay,
yes.
great.
They did hurdles and 100-yard dash and stuff like that over there. That was the sports facility in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I believe.
Okay. Great.
I think Karen hit the nail on the head. It is the diversity of the land that's there. You know, I think that's what gives it a lot of character. And it opens up to a lot of potential because it's not just a space that's going to be fields.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I spent some time with Dave last winter, like snowshoeing through the woods and kind of checking out the
Great.
pond.
Yeah.
That I've lived here for 17 years and I hadn't walked into those woods. You know, I did that with Chris, and, you know, we went out and explored the few of us, I think, from the parks, went out and explored the woods there too to get the lay of the land. So there is a lot of potential there. So, you know.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity
Yeah.
and a lot of sort of especially unique features that you don't see everywhere that are kind of things that we would like to highlight as part of the design, so.
One of the very important challenges we have right now is we do not have a thorough survey of that property.
Yeah.
We are, actually, I'll find out
Sort of ends
next Monday if it's going to be funded or not, or proposed in the capital plan for next year, to actually do a complete survey of that property. One of the challenges, I'd like to see a trail connect from Highland Street alongside the pond, and I'm not sure that we have clear access from there through without impacting the wetlands to the point where we can't put a trail through.
Or private
There is a
property.
block right there where you started with your finger on Highland Street. There is an area there big enough for a pocket park, and there's already parking there, so we've
Yeah,
talked
it's right
about that
right in
also
there.
as
Yeah.
one of the options that might be listed in the master plan as a future project.
Yep,
So that, that area where you just were, Catherine,
right here,
yeah, like, yep, right in that area. So the senior center, that's sort of in the area where we are right now. We're a little bit to your right now, but,
yeah, up,
our senior center is in that area, and one of the things I think as a park commission, we don't have is things for, you know, definitely middle age and definitely the older folks. We don't have that. So to be able to put something over on that, that pond side, that's in walking distance to our senior center, even if it's, you know, to pull up and have lunch, to walk over and have a place to sit, you know, have it feel like you're, you know,
Get the
you're away, but you're
amenities.
not away, you know, it's, I think that would be, I think that would be a big thing, especially for the, you know, because of the fact the senior center's right there, and they do have a good turnout at their senior center, so.
And there's a very significant historical site on the other end of that, well, right there, yep, and that's the town pound. That was used to corral loose cattle back in the day, and they were held there until their owners came for it. That
Is that on
still
our
there.
property, Dave?
I believe so, but I'd have to
Interesting.
double check it
like just in the
again.
corner here.
Yeah, it is. The-
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
it
that
was.
is a,
It's in her side yard,
Is
right?
there a wall there?
that
This
is.
is
the
It
almost-
wall.
you can-
It's stone walls.
And there's a
Yep.
little,
Just see
there's a
it
little
here.
sign on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
Stone walls with a steel gate.
That end of the pond is where we, people access for skating in the wintertime.
okay, so there is skating in the wintertime there.
Yeah, so they're on and on, there's a few that go out there. We found the old hockey nets last winter, and they were built back in the 70s, I think, and old hockey benches, so those have been procured again and brought back out last winter. So I'm sure they'll be out there this winter again.
They got a pretty good winter last year
Yeah.
and use on the pond. When I was a kid, it froze over in late October, early November, and you had it until spring. So you had a much longer season that you could get on the ice there without falling through it. That's one of the other things that we attempted to do 2 winters ago, I believe. We actually had a skating rink, a collapsible portable skating rink on order, but when the pandemic hit, it just never shipped. And that's something that I think we need a good flat area so that we're able to do that somewhere in the park. And I see it doubling as extra parking space in the spring, summer, and fall, and then set up as a skating rink in the wintertime.
I noticed that in some of the survey that you sent me, Chris, I had a quick chance to look through
Sure,
it.
yeah, there's a lot in there.
But that seemed to be a consistent comment, was that that's something that people would like to see,
Yep.
some sort of a skating opportunity.
And that was in, I didn't send it over because I'm like, I don't want to totally inundate her with stuff in one full shot, but I sat, Anna is our rep now for open space, but I sat on the open space committee when we were going through the process of putting together the current plan, and I put all the survey results together, so I got to go through and enter like what everybody gave for answers, and ice skating came up time and time again. So it's, you know, and I think with the pandemic, I think something that at least that I've learned is that people are we're looking for something that we didn't have. They couldn't, you know, for whatever reason, when people see a baseball field, they don't look at it and say, I can go play in the outfield, my kids can go run. And some people will do it, but the majority of people won't. Whereas if they saw a large soccer field, they're like, oh, I can go and play with my kids there. And I don't know why that happens. You know, but because a couple of times in the early pandemic times, I'd go down to Marshall and there's nobody there. And I was just there with my 2 kids, and they were running and, you know, at one point, somebody from the neighbor came through and, oh, they're not supposed to be out there if they're not playing baseball. Okay, like, we're good, but thanks, you know, so trying to, you know, include stuff.
One quick thing I'll just mention that, and I don't know when this image came from, the time, but one thing that has happened is the perimeter of the pond has changed over the years. My neighbor actually gave me pictures of the pond starting in early 2000. And I think there's so much muck on the bottom that the water has raised. So what it now looks to be land, it might be
Okay.
marsh type of very soft ground on the edges.
Yeah.
And that's particularly true in that area there because that's a very low area.
You can see.
Yeah, so it's very low, so the water definitely goes in a lot more that way. On the opposite side, on the park side, you know, it starts going uphill, so it's not, the water hasn't really gone
Sort
that
of
much.
goes-
Yeah,
Yep. Okay.
but the perimeter of the pond has changed, and, yeah.
Yeah, so the photo is actually from today.
Okay.
But the wetland boundary that you're seeing, this sort of blue overlay,
Oh, okay.
that's from Mass GIS. So that may reflect the previous bounds of the pond. And then the photo underneath reflects the limits of the pond today.
You're going to find that pond is being artificially held at a much higher water level, too. We're having trouble with the beavers at
Okay.
the culvert that comes under Highland Street. They're still impacting the water level. That pond's at least a foot higher than it's supposed to be.
Okay.
I don't think necessarily it's the beavers. I think, well-
It definitely is the beavers.
okay, so when the whole pond went up, kind of, it's almost like a flooded area. So the perimeter of the pond itself, so it might have the same amount of water, but it looks much higher. Okay.
The culvert, the water level of the pond is either at the top or over the culvert most of the time now.
So if you clear that culvert for the water to go to what you
The
thought to,
pond
hold up.
level will drop
Just-
approximately a foot
Right.
overall, and the pond will retract.
But my point on that is that the level of water would be much less.
Where it has
From-
traditionally been. That culvert hasn't been changed in probably 40 years.
But the bed of the pond has gone up because of
Yeah,
weeds.
so you'll have a shallow pond, but
Right.
your water, the top of or the surface of your water is artificially higher than it's been. And I'm sure if you take Google Earth and run it back date-wise, you could probably see those level changes, especially with all the rain we had this year.
See a lot of algae bloom and some of the people are,
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
pond's in tough,
It's covered.
the water condition is really tough. I mean, we used to swim in it when I was a kid, and it would, you know, it had leeches and all that kind of stuff in it, but you could swim in it without getting tangled up in the weeds and the mud. You can't now.
Okay.
You brought up the survey, and I know it was a question that Karen had asked during the interview process and so forth, but the other thing that was very consistent in the survey is and it goes along with the inclusivity of the park and diversity of the park, is something different as far as all-purpose playground, play area for
Right.
for kids too.
Something that's,
Something that's new and-
universally accessible.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a little nostalgia, and every time I drive in on the Mass Ave side for what's there for playground equipment. And my thought process the other day was, well, if we don't need to do anything in that spot, is there any reason why we have to touch those? Because the kids do play on them, the parents are okay with it. And, you know, they've been there for
Many years.
decades.
Yeah. So I think that where they're located right now is, my understanding is that it may be in conflict with the skate park.
It should not impact it except
Okay.
Near it.
construction. It's near it, but I don't
Okay,
think it
great.
impacts it.
Yeah, and that's, we'll actually touch on the skate park shortly. But in terms of let's see. What would you like to change the most about Marshall Park? Did we just do that?
We kind of touched upon it, but I think it's
Yeah,
the same
it's-
as the diversity of the park, you know, more
Yeah.
inclusivity within the park.
Yeah, not, and like I said before, not so much bringing big crowds back as more consistent use. I'm there at different times of the day. My schedule's jumping around. I came out of retirement, so I'm actually working again. So I'm in and out of the park at different times, and I run into people almost every time I'm there, walking the track or walking through the park. That's going to be another thing that's going to be real important, and that is walking accessibility from Chestnut Street through to Mass Ave.
Yep.
I had a conversation with the DPW director about closing those big gates at the back of the 90-foot diamond, because there's concern about if we leave those gates open, we could end up with the vehicle driving all over the field. But if we chain that gate shut, then the only access through the park is to either sneak behind the fence where the old bathroom was, which we could potentially put a good walkway through there and they could go that way, or then they need to move over to center field and there is a walk-through gate there.
Right.
So if the
Okay.
fence is gonna stay, then maybe we put a walk-through gate over there also. There's been a couple of suggestions also that, and we need to do a little bit of checking on field size to make sure it doesn't negate its usability for the baseball
Right.
teams, but that was to take that fence and put it to towards the field side of the track. Because the way it's set up now, if there's a game going on,
Right.
if somebody walks around that track, which we did when we held a meeting there, they held up the game because as far as they were concerned, we were on the
You were on
field.
the field,
I
yeah.
wanted to tell them we were on the track, but, you know. I would like to throw a couple of things in, just general things. So this is one area that Dave and I don't agree with. I actually think that if there's a way to get a drive-through from Chestnut Street through Mass Ave, so there's more than one exit in and one exit out. But I also think that I know absolutely nothing about the layout of the land, how things get done. But when I look at that 90-foot diamond, we've had other issues with it other than just people parking over there. We have, I don't know if you noticed, Nick, when you were there, we have this wire thing set up and it's got a big net that gets pulled across it. It might be up right now for the winter. But when I first came on this commission 5 years ago, the first thing I walked into was the fact that balls were leaving the 90-foot diamond and hitting people's homes. And we had a whole lot of complaints about that. So when I look at that side of things, you know, is there a different configuration that can be done if the 90-foot diamond is to stay so that we're not catching, we don't have to use this net anymore, which some people don't have a problem with and other people are like, this is problematic.
Last winter, that net got damaged because of the snow.
Yeah,
This winter, the DPW has now done a good job, it looks like, to pull it back this year to avoid the damage of it collecting
Okay.
the snow.
Oh,
But, yeah, like what she's saying, like, if we can reconfigure maybe, where that net's not necessary, and you can have just a traditional sort of,
because when I look at Marshall
backstop or
Park,
whatever.
this is hard I want to make sure it comes out right, so let me think about it for a second. I am not looking to push any sports programs out of our properties. But that said, we have 7 baseball fields, softball fields, including the T-ball field that we're maintaining, and they don't get used all the time. And is there a way to either take our, you know, that, I'll use a 90-foot diamond because it's the best example of it. Is there a way to, you know, can that be configured so that we can have some rectangular field space? Even if it's not high school regulation size, even if it's just for a U12 type program, you know, is there a way to do that? Is there a way to, you know, do we need to start considering requesting that our Little League programs are moving some of their, you know, can T-ball be moved to one of our other fields that would, you know, free up this space? And in order to do that, it's hard for me to envision what could go in there. So to try to start figuring out what could go there, because if it makes more sense to have something else there, then I think that's the direction we should consider moving in.
okay.
Yeah, my feeling in that respect, if we're gonna move something away from Marshall Park, Why are we doing it, and do we need that space for something more appropriate?
Okay.
I totally agree with that. The radical adjustment to the 90-foot diamond, and this is radical, and I don't totally support it, but it would take care of a lot of issues. If you took the 90-foot diamond and completely flipped it 180 degrees. That way, it puts your home plate in the center of the park. It brings the bulk of your spectators wanting to be on that end of the park, so they'll come in from 2A instead of parking on Chestnut Street. I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but that's one of the radical things that could be done to help with the parking situation and the balls hitting the houses across Chestnut Street. It's a rare thing to see a home run ball go that far. I don't think it would make it across Chestnut Street if your home plate was up the other end.
Okay.
But that's something that, might be in the consideration of when you see if it reconfigures properly.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, can I
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Come on up, Mr. Rogers.
You've got to
We
be on the
can't
mic,
hear
Dave.
you on the
This
TV.
is being a little easy.
Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. The reason I'm here is I haven't seen any of you folks for ages, and I missed you. And I couldn't get in on Zoom.
You
Oh,
couldn't?
really?
No,
Why didn't you reach out to me?
because you were here, and I was at 82 Highland Street.
Well, I'm
We were all
sorry.
home.
I would have figured out. I'm sorry.
No, I wrote everything down, and they said that the 792-737-0353 was an invalid number. So-
Maybe I said it wrong. I apologize.
That's
if I
okay,
did.
I'm just offering it.
Thank you.
Because I don't
Thank
know
you.
how many people are, trying to get in. And the format that you've selected, which I'm sure is a good one, would preclude somebody like me that lives right down the street from getting
Yeah,
anything in.
understood.
And if you know me, and you will, I'm a big mouth, okay? I've got a lot to say. So, all right.
Thanks for coming down.
House next door to where I grew up.
So I've got a bunch of things I'd like to share at the appropriate time, and something that you said, Dave, concerns me, and I want to make sure that we get the right semblance here.
I know where you're coming from, Dave, but go ahead.
That you said we'll have input from the populace, about, and this isn't that kind of a.
Oh, yes, it is. It's the first of.
Okay, because I'm saying, because it was.
I'm sorry, if
No
that was
problem.
misunderstood.
Because, Karen's got some dishes that she wants me to do, and I can't, if she finds out that I'm not doing it, I just should be there.
Does she know you're here?
Yeah,
Now she
Okay.
does. She's
Yeah,
watching TV.
yeah. All right, so whenever,
No, go ahead. Feel free, please. Share.
Go ahead. Sure.
Absolutely.
Go
Okay.
for it.
what I like about Lunenburg transcends to a lot of what I like about Marshall Park. We have been here 40-plus years and lived right next door to Dave and his family. And our son, our late son, who passed away, Jason, was always at Marshall Park and Marshall Pond. Okay, and when he passed, as did other youngsters in the town, we put up a memorial for Jason, as did the Dion family, as did the Membrino family. I would be very, very upset if anybody tried to move those. We could reposition them maybe, but that's what is part of Lunenburg.
Dave, can I ask a question? When you say move them, do you mean move them out of the park?
Yeah.
Or move them?
Move them out of the park.
Okay, let me be very clear on that, Mr.
Okay.
Rogers. We will not be doing that.
Okay.
Every memorial piece that is in there
Yep.
will remain within Marshall Park.
And for the record, we got permission to do this, and it didn't cost the town. Okay. That's fine. I appreciate that, and I just wanted to get the cards on the table. The real concern I have about this whole project is safety. I live on Highland Street, which is right next to Chestnut, And, when there's a baseball game or an event, you'd be hard pressed to get a fire truck or a rescue vehicle down there.
Chestnut Street.
And that to me is unconscionable. Okay, you just can't do that.
On
Oh, no, in the
Chestnut
park.
Street?
Chestnut Street.
In the park, yeah.
The park.
And when you started off talking about Marshall Park and then you transcended to Marshall Pond, folks, you got to walk that space. There's no way in hell you're going to access that from the side without spending a ton of dough. Okay? And the kids in town used to go down and they would shovel the snow. And, they'd skate, and it was a fun place. They had a couple of lights, and Bud Larkin was in charge of turning them off and turning them on. And, it was really New England. I think that's great to have. So I would strongly suggest that you forget about doing anything to Marshall Pond, for some of the things that are said and expanded. So the other thing is that, I've heard this statement time and time again. You don't ever want to build a church for Easter Sunday. Okay? So you might like cross-country skiing, and obviously I like jogging. Yeah. So, this can't be all things to all people. We've got to pick and choose what we can do and do it right. Let me digress a little bit and tell you that years ago, two of the finest citizens in Lunenburg, Brian Roberts and Joe McBride, went through and did a walking trail so that you could go to various places and pull-ups and sit-ups and all that stuff, and nobody took care of it. It's a wonderful venue, and you talk about kids accessing and stuff. So things like that won't cost you a lot of money, and it's great. I heard what you said about baseball, and I'll try to be as diplomatic as I possibly can, which is not always easy. There will be a riot in Lunenburg if you try to change substantially the area for baseball on Marshall Park, my opinion.
Area
And-
meaning,
Huh?
the area meaning what? The number
Change
of?
it to a soccer field.
Okay.
Yeah, not happening, believe me, okay? So, I would strongly recommend that you do your homework, and I understand what you're up against, okay? There's a very generous contractor in this town that spent thousands on Marshall Park and the fields down below, okay? And we probably could have got more assistance had we not screwed it up as a community. There's no way that they will be as generous to like the things that could make sense. And that's unfortunate, in my view, personal view. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, we need more fields. It's real simple, in my mind. We need more fields. And you can't make silk out of a sow's ear, and you can only do so much. So my suggestion to you is to really solve, first of all, the parking problem, because no matter what you do, if you can't park here and get access and have it safe, you spent your money unnecessarily, okay? Now, because I'm such a religious person, I said, we need some divine intervention here. We need to talk to St. Boniface and say, hey, how about if we can sit down and work out a mutually agreed upon plan so that we can park cars for baseball events in your back, parking lot, and it won't interfere. We obviously won't do that. And we can have an access into Marshall Park, and, work out something that makes some sense and doesn't bastardize the whole area in terms of, the way it's going to be reconfigured. I also have a concern about handicapped facilities. I mean, this whole situation, in my mind, screams for a tight tank. You don't need all kinds of stuff down there. It's for a certain amount of period of time and people and stuff. So we've got to be real careful. And I will shut up, but right now. But I want, at some particular point in time, someone to come to the town and say, you know what? We've done a few of these things, and given the parameters that we have and kind of what you have, you're looking down the barrel of X millions of dollars.
We'll be getting it.
Okay, so because it's an exercise in futility, if you have a champagne appetite, there'll be a pocketbook. So there's a lot of things that need to be done, but I commend you for at least addressing the problem. Because, it is a problem and people are entitled to recreational activities but we've got to do it smart. So thank you for the time.
I am going to take the opportunity, since you pointed it out, just to give the phone number and the code again, just in case anybody at home is looking to log on. The toll-free number is 888
Yep,
475
yep,
4499.
yep,
And a meeting ID 792
yep,
737
yep.
0353.
Didn't work. I
Yeah,
called
Chris
it
just
4
checked
times.
it. You just checked it,
And there
right?
was it came through?
Yeah, well, you'll have to ask him when you sit down.
Okay.
He called it for us to make
Oh.
sure.
And it went right through and you could raise your hand and all that? Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe it's my error, but that's fine.
Maybe
it's
it
good
could be
to
your
see
phone.
you.
Appreciate you coming
Yeah,
down.
thank you so much.
Good to see my neighbor.
We did that, Dave, so you'd come up to see us.
We missed you. Anytime, you know where to find me.
Hey, listen, I'm not shy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
If I could, Madam Chair?
Yes.
And I know this, I'd just like to respond to Mr. Rogers' concern about the dollar amount cost for this project. I want to see us, my personal opinion is I want to see us come up with the best project we possibly can and not worry about the price tag up front. Secondly, it's my intention, and we already have people that are actually members of the Open Space Committee who are very familiar with the grant application processes for funding for projects of this type. In my mind, other than what we have proposed through capital spending for some of the initial work for Marshall Park, I personally hope we see it all done through grants.
And I did want to respond to one other thing. So we are actually planning a real community outreach for our next meeting. This is sort of our preliminary meeting with the commission to sort of start gathering input. And then we're anticipating a meeting where we'll be doing a lot of outreach to different community groups in town, making sure that everybody knows about the next meeting. And we'll have another series of activities so that we're really getting meaningful input. So this isn't the only time. Yeah. So.
Awesome, thank you. Chris, did you have anything you wanted to? Okay.
So.
I'm sure, I'm sure.
What, you haven't got 10 texts yet?
I have.
So, at this point, I wonder if there's any information that, we've sort of been pointing to the map and talking about things that we might not be aware of. Are there any other things that you can think of? And I know that there's probably a book, Dave.
He's about to hit you with a really good one. I think he
Okay.
already did, but it needs to come out again so the rest of the commissioners can hear it, because I didn't know we were memorializing cars in the woods. So go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so,
Well, it's been there, and I can get the exact history on it and who's responsible for it being there. But there is a very old Pontiac buried in the woods. And there's a
Further down.
Yeah,
In there.
Yeah, kind of towards that side.
Okay.
It came from a property that butts the park from the 2A side. Two, what I will call notorious teenagers, were out practicing, learning how to drive in their parents' back field when that was an open field, and got it stuck in the mud, and they left it there. So there's a story to be told there. I would like to see it staked off with steel posts and black chains and a plaque that memorializes how it got there. That's
I would like not, so just we're on the same page.
I don't want equipment going in there to remove it from the property. I mean, it's gonna disrupt wetlands and everything else if we try to do that. And that's a historical piece of this town, and when the two people that are memorialized, that actually, one is passed, the other one is still alive.
Okay.
And well-known families in town also. So I see that as as part of the memorial trail around the park for, as Mr. Rogers mentioned, we have a number of memorials there, including the Susan Ware building on the softball field. I think that needs to be totally renovated and preserved, as well as all the other monuments.
Okay.
And we have a historic trail around the whole park. It can be a destination for geocaching or whatever. But that would bring more passive recreation and a reason to go there to get to these different stations around the park,
Okay.
including the underground bunker
And the Pontiac.
In the Pontiac, yes.
and the Pontiac.
So when I look at it, and I think of this process, and in an ideal world, I'd be handing you a blank slate and say, show me what you can do. And take all of our input and turn it into something amazing. So when I look at it, I'm not, and Mr. Rogers is not probably going to like this comment, I'm not sold on the fact that everything has to stay exactly where it is. I would like to preserve as much of the baseball field space as we can. Again, I'm not looking to drive any programs out, while also trying to, if we can, increase some of our playing fields so that we have more options, especially for our recreation department as they're trying to put on programming. And I think that trying to find a location for community use, whether it be, and part of this is for parks use as well, some sort of pavilion-y type area. And if it means we have to lose something in order to gain something, I think that needs to be taken into consideration. We can run programming in a pavilion area. It's really difficult, almost impossible, to run any long-term program in an open area when you don't know what the weather's gonna bring. So to have something covered like that, you know, the benefits of that may outweigh keeping something else, and I'm okay with that, as long as whatever we put in there makes sense.
I concur.
I was clearing my throat, but I do have others, but Chris, if you've got anything.
No, I'm in the same mindset, I think, as Karen. Like, I'm, you know, I don't have as much history in the town, and I've been here a while now, 17 years, but I certainly don't have the history of the town. I have younger kids. I have a daughter that'll be a freshman next year, and a son that's in 6th grade right now. He'll be 7th grade next year. So there's, you know, they're soccer players and runners and things. So, see, you know, certainly there's a lack of field space, as Mr. Rogers alluded to, in town. You know, the soccer programs rely on school fields. There is no public field, or,
Okay.
recreational fields in town other than the school grounds. Similarly, the school relies on these baseball and softball fields for their athletics as well. So I think as we continue along the process and making sure that we are inclusive of everybody and figuring that out, you know, involving Little League and things and understanding field sizes and, you know, T-ball field, how critical is it and what can we do with it and things like that. I mean, I think it's going to be important to involve all those groups and look at all the possibilities that you folks come up with and let people look at them and, you know, provide their input and, you know, does it work?
We did have a question about this smaller triangular sort of stone dust field here.
That's the
Yes, that's the
T-ball field.
T-ball
That's
field.
T-ball.
Yeah,
Okay, that's what we
the
wondered.
T-ball field.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And
So my understanding so far is the size of the various fields matters.
Right. It seemed T-ball appropriate,
Yes.
but.
So
I was
we don't,
curious.
these are not our only baseball fields. We have 2 other locations.
Yeah.
And I did broach the subject with the head of the Little League program last week. He likes that field because it's enclosed and it's a smaller field. I'm not 100% convinced they couldn't use some of our other locations because we do have some other small fields. Because again, that's the area when I say if something better could fit there, if it's more conducive to something else, then, you know, maybe that's the direction that we need to go in.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Dave had alluded to this before, said earlier that, you know, that 90-foot diamond has been there for a long, long time, and then the other fields came after. To me, when I look at it, it's sort of been pieced together, but pieced together in a way that doesn't necessarily make the best sense because of when the pieces went in. So how do you put it together now so that it makes sense? I don't know, that's your job. It's out of my pay scale. Because I know nothing about it.
Okay, I'm ready. If you're done?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a scribbled drawing here of one possibility for the pavilion location. And I don't honestly know whether it makes sense and fits into that space. But the area to the, what would that be, the west of the 90-foot diamond where the 100-yard dash track is, yeah, that plateau area there, I have scribbled on here, written in access from Chestnut, parking access in from Chestnut Street into the front third of that area, then the pavilion as you move to the rear of the park, and then beyond the pavilion would be, if we can do it, shuffleboard, volleyball, things like that. If we do go with a septic system on the property, it would be in that area that I'm suggesting the shuffleboard, volleyball go. I'm told by the engineer that we can easily put volleyball courts on top of a septic system, and he's actually added I'm not sure what it's called, but it's a fabric layer to protect the leach field from anything on top if we put sand or whatever. So that's kind of my picture of that area, if we can do it. I think if it's a multi-use pavilion, it will give us another option for family events or small community events. The bathrooms hopefully will end up within proximity to that area. And that's going to be a big question as to where we actually locate the toilet building. There's been extensive discussion about the size of the number of toilets with these present septic system, if we go that route, which we already have funding for, affects no taxpayers' dollars. We can put that in next spring if we wanted to. That will accommodate 1,000 gallons a day.
Okay.
And what the Board of Health has said is that could be up to 6 toilets, three on each side, or we do multi-sex toilet facilities. And any big events that we know are coming there will be much easier to permit the portable toilets under Mass General Law and Title V because we have existing facilities.
Okay.
So that's kind of one of the things that's been in my head for quite a while.
You handing it over to her?
Yeah, actually, you can have it.
Exhibit
I'm
A.
just looking to see if any of the other notes.
Yeah, you can also scan it if it's better.
I've already mentioned all the others, and it'll give you a reminder of some of the thoughts I had in my head.
you.
And like I said, it's all scribbled, but
Oh, yeah, okay.
Enter as Exhibit A.
Like, we probably didn't even need to hire you guys. We could have just had Dave do it all.
What was your proposal, Dave?
and one of the
It'll
things
make our
about
job much easier.
one of the things about volleyball.
We're gonna be disappointed if you come back just with that
I haven't
drawing, though.
Made the contact with who runs the indoor volleyball, but I believe there's a winter series of indoor volleyball, and we could have programming to move to outdoor volleyball for the spring, summer, and fall, and extend that program through the whole year.
Okay. And that's, that actually sort of segues into our next question for you all, which is, I know there was a mention of a summer camp and needing facilities to accommodate those campers, as well as anybody else who comes to use the park. I know that you have Little League We wondered if there were any other sort of athletic league schedules or camp schedules that we might have access to, and if there's a clearinghouse where we can go to find that information. Is there anyone you can recommend?
We'll
or
let Karen deal with that one.
So it was up until 2 years ago, it was actually me. I did the
Okay.
scheduling of those fields. We do have I mean, I know the user groups that have come in to use it every now and again.
Okay.
We currently have a recreation director. I don't know if he's still considered temp, or I think he's still considered the temp recreation director. We did have somebody for a while that was handling all that. They may have something. I think there's a calendar on our MyRec site
Okay.
that might show it. The Little League they put their stuff in to like a Google Calendar, so they granted me access to that years ago. So now when I'm not paying attention in the spring, suddenly my phone explodes with like all of these new entries. I'm like, okay, like at first you panic thinking it's yours, and then it's like, oh, it's theirs. So I do have access to the things like that, and I do know the user groups that use those fields. The primary users of that field are the Lunenburg Little League. The Lunenburg High School uses it for their JV softball and baseball, as well as varsity softball and baseball. The Lunenburg Phillies, which is an adult-based
baseball.
league, they use it. And there was an AAU team that came out of New Hampshire that used it this past year.
That was new.
But, one thing might be the easiest to, I think you do have everybody's contact information, maybe just forward to them. Because I'm also thinking of, I think we have other, outside the ones that use, we have other groups that could use.
Yep.
So we can reach out to them and invite them to participate in the next meeting, and they might tell you,
that would be great.
And I think just the contact information will probably be.
Yep. I can
Because
get
we
all
have
that together.
don't we have a lacrosse?
Cross
league
plays in
now?
Leominster.
They play in
They play in
Leominster.
Leominster.
Yeah.
Is it field hockey then? There are some leagues and some youth sports so that might be the easiest way.
Yeah, that would be great.
We had some conversations in a recent meeting, I say recent, in the last few months. Time flies too fast for me to even tell you when it was. But some of the people that were involved in some of those other entities, one of them was Babe Ruth League, used to play at Marshall. I'm not even going to get into the politics of how they ended up out of town, but there was some desire for them to, from their point of view, to come back to town.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's a good move to do until we figure out what we're doing with the 90-foot diamond, have them disrupt what they've scheduled for the last 5 years, come back to Lunenburg, and then find out they got to move back out, either for construction or whatever. But there are some entities. The one that came down from New Hampshire, they came down because they were not able to use Franklin Pierce. It was Franklin Pierce,
I
wasn't it?
don't know, I didn't
Whatever
follow it.
the college in southern New Hampshire, that's where they normally play.
Yeah,
and they
Franklin
weren't
Pierce
able to use
University.
those fields that, this past summer.
Okay. Okay.
The only other thing I'd add that we haven't really talked about are, small picnic areas, inexpensive to set up. We've got some beautiful pine groves, and I am concerned about the age and size of our pine trees. They're shallow rooted. The storms we're having these days are taking trees like that down left and right. It's amazing that they've lasted for 100 years or whatever, and now all of a sudden they're getting blown down. We haven't seen a lot of that in the park, but we have seen a little bit of it.
Okay, that's something to be aware
But
of.
the plateau overlooking Marshall Pond is a perfect spot for one. There's a whole pine grove there. There's a pine grove to the right of home plate at the 90-foot diamond that I think would be appropriate. Yeah, right there, that green right there where your finger is, yep, that's Pine Grove there, I think would be appropriate for one or two tables.
Is that correct? You're talking about?
No, that's down on Highland Street. Come to the jog and the property line back in there. Okay, now come down the map a little bit, close to the pond though. There's, I don't think it's back quite that far.
Isn't there like a
You're in the
gigantic-
you're in the general area, but there's a high plateau right there with a pine grove, and it should show in the aerials pretty clearly.
Isn't it like a gigantic hill, Dave, to get up and down from that area?
It's
No.
pretty,
No.
there's some topography back.
Chris,
here,
would
but
you,
yeah.
would you agree that it's not a gigantic climb up and down?
I don't know, I felt like I had to be
'Cause
pulled up the last
that's
time
where-
I was there.
that's- Oh, well, that's getting back out of the woods
Okay.
onto the Powell Field side, and that needs to be dealt with. There needs to be access from the parking lots into whatever trail system we create. And
There's a
and the
steep
problem
grade off
is that when
baseball field.
that field was constructed,
No, that's a short grade, so the next, just there, yeah, right where, that grade down right off the end of that.
seems,
yeah,
we were looking at the,
when Powell Field was
drop.
constructed,
Coming,
there were,
coming towards 2A, it's a shallower entrance
okay.
into the woods and so forth.
So you guys had
There
me
were-
climbing up the big hill instead of taking me the shallow entrance?
yeah.
Just be,
Good night,
just to
Mr.
be
Rogers.
clear. Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
You know,
Thank you.
one,
It's almost a wall.
Well, that's
Yeah.
because that was fill, there were hundreds of loads of fill that were put in there, and then they never tapered the grade off of the parking lot into the woods, so you've got.
I think there's a downed
that-
tree you
That
can
needs
walk
to be
up.
dealt with if we're gonna have trail access there. That, near the bat houses, you guys mentioned the bat houses, that's where it would be.
You want to make a comment? Can Chris jump in front of you? Is that all right?
yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I had hoped.
Who are
Dave-
you?
Who
Oh,
are
Chris
you, and
Menard,
can you please be on the
672
camera?
Page Street.
Come in a little
Come
more.
in.
I'm sorry, sir, would you please come to the, where the camera can see you?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. All right, there
There
you're
we go.
good.
They moved the camera, Chris.
Oh,
You're good.
Chris Menard, 672 Page Street. I do want to say on the baseball issue, we got to plan this park for what it's going to be in 10 years, in 30 years. And 9 years ago, when we left Little League as a family, there were 5 major league teams. There's now 2. And if you look around the area, Leominster used to have 3 leagues, and I think they're down to 1 or 2. They definitely combined one of them. So kids are not as interested in baseball as they once were. And lacrosse is much on the rise. So I do agree that within parks, there is a need for rectangular fields, and there's a much less need for baseball fields. And there is a nostalgia. It is America's pastime and all that, and you do understand that. But the reality is that it's not as used as it should be. And I do think you got to take that into consideration and let what the needs are drive the process. And I'm also an architect and an engineer, so I know people like to jump to solutions, but I think what we need to keep at this stage is requirements and kind of design heuristics and those sorts of things at this stage. So, I mean, some of the ideas may lead to those requirements being elicited, but don't jump to solutions yet, would be my comment. Thanks.
If I could make a final comment about the rectangular fields, I personally believe that this town needs to find a piece of property to create a rectangular field complex. I don't think retrofitting Marshall Park is necessarily going to fix our needs for rectangular fields. I don't disagree that if we could use the outfield in the 90-foot diamond for a practice field, which has been done in the past for lacrosse and/or soccer, I'm not sure
It
which.
was field hockey.
Field hockey, excuse me. That's fine, but we need a rectangular field complex. And there have been a couple of missed opportunities for that to happen, and this town is great at missing opportunities.
It is also a great town in many ways, and Dave will be the first one to tell you that.
Yes,
but,
I didn't want to slam the
You
town
know,
too hard.
one thing I just want to circle back to the pond, regarding the pond and trails and so forth. You know, towards the end of the pond, where it's doesn't have a lot of people going there, there's a lot of actually wildlife there. There's great horned owls, there's a pair of gray herons, various types of ducks, and it's just beautiful. So as we talk about, you know, adding nature trails, we got to make sure we're not driving nature out. And it's kind of a unique little nook, I think in part because it's so isolated from foot traffic and cars, but it is actually a very vibrant pond, and part of that is because the access is not so high. So we gotta, you know, I would hate to see
Balance.
that go away, because if wildlife moves away, wildlife is what's keeping the pond alive, even though sometimes because the beaver causes a little bit of trouble. But, you know, beavers are also, they eat the lily pads that are there. So we got to be mindful to not drive wildlife out. And I'm not crazy, I don't like the idea at all of trying to create an access from Highland through the edge of the pond, which is, I know it's all marsh, and, you know, to the park. I don't see the point of that. You know, when you guys were presenting, you had an overlook, and I think that's a good idea. But going through where now there is very vibrant wildlife, I think it would be a disservice to the location.
Okay.
Now I'm going to bounce back to the fields, if that's okay. I think Chris spoke well that, you know, I think we got to look in the future what we'll need for. I don't know if there's ways to combine some of the field usage, like there are fewer teams, so maybe we don't need 3 different fields, or 4, maybe we need 2. And I think one thing that I've really taken away from what Chris said and Mr. Rogers and everybody is, and with my thoughts as well, Marshall Park is located in the town center.
Yes.
And with that, it would be great if we have a more flexible space. I don't know what that would look like, but to be 90% of its use or more to be exclusively baseball doesn't really serve the town in 10, 20 years. So I think creating a space that will allow us to have various uses. And it might not be a whole complex of rectangular fields. It might be practice fields that you don't need to be regulation. So I think it would be interesting to create a space that way that it's so easy to be access to by, you know, anyone in town, especially kids coming after school, senior center. So that's my 2 cents. And like I say, tell my husband 2 cents are only worth 2 cents. But yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we as a commission have a responsibility to make sure that this space that it is in the center of town can be used by the majority of the town, you know, however we determine that to be. And maybe if it is baseball, it's baseball, but can we reconfigure those fields and figure out a way that that also allows for multi-purpose use. You know, if you know, there's a lot right near this park. Boys and Girls Club, as Karen pointed out, the senior center. Boys and Girls Club's across the street. Senior Center's just down the road from them. So, you know, the more we can incorporate what's here in the center of town, the schools are right here, a half mile. You know, everything is a half mile from this park.
It's really very centrally located. Yeah.
So I think there's you know, there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think that's, you know, our responsibility to make sure that's what we're bringing forward.
And, you know, and maybe the vision is, you know, if we were to think of these projects as in phases, because I think everybody's right that we will need a rectangular field complex. Maybe we'll build the 90-foot diamond somewhere else in the future because we have found that there is no suitable parking and, you know, whatever decisions we may be. But maybe the project, the conceptual project will look something like, you know, until you have your rectangular field, until you have your baseball field elsewhere, this is what you do. Phase 2 would be something else. And I think that might allow us to create that vision of 10, 20, 30 years down the line. And, you know, and it gives us also time to build that space.
We have that other property too, the Saliba property that's
Right.
under our care, which I think
do.
is potentially designated for field space down the line, so.
Chris Menard, 672 Page Street, again, sorry. Just one thing that comes to mind is if you look at Devon's and you look at the big, huge field there, they run tournaments there, and there's probably 40 fields set up. And then on Monday, you didn't even know there was a game going on there because it's back down to grass. So there is a lot of ways you can probably do kind of these pop-up events. And when I say that, they do soccer, they do ultimate frisbee, you know, they have all sorts of things that go in and out of there, and it's multi-use. And then the next day, people are just walking around and kind of playing on the field. So ice skating in the winter, that sort of thing. So,
Chris, if I may ask, what's the acreage there?
It's
Huge.
44 acres.
Yeah, okay, there's a key. I wanted to be sure that that was stated.
It scales.
One comment I'd like to make about the ball fields is that each one of them is uniquely designed for the use that is on those fields.
See that?
The 90-foot diamond has a grassed infield. The softball field is, I forget what they call it, there is a term for it.
Stone dust, I think.
But it's all dirt around the bases, and all the way to home plate is all dirt. There's no grass in the infield. And then obviously, the Little League field is similar configuration to the 90-foot diamond, but sized appropriate for Little League. So the designs are specific to the uses that are being, they were designed for the uses. Let me put it that way.
So, I was going to ask if there were any public questions or comments from Zoom land.
Nope, we don't have anybody on, so we're good.
Great. So next, I wanted to check in on next steps with everyone.
Yeah, so the first thing I think we need to figure out is the date of our next meeting.
Right.
So Catherine and I had spoken yesterday, and our next meeting is currently scheduled for December 20th. Why it didn't raise red flags to us back in, September when we were doing this, I don't know, but it's the week of the Christmas holiday, and I don't know what we would get for public participation that week. I like public participation. The more we have, the better I think we are. So I would like to see what you guys think about moving that meeting into early January, possibly the 5th, which is when our third meeting was supposed to be scheduled.
I'd be in favor of that.
Yep. I favor that.
I won't comment.
I know, Dave's going, so, I don't know what we get for it, so Dave's schedule's changing, so his nighttime availability is less, starting next week, so you guys have done this before, do you get a better turnout of a meeting during the day or in the evening?
Evening.
Okay,
Yeah.
People are off work. They can get childcare, bring the kids with them. Yeah,
okay,
tends to be
yeah,
easier.
we tend to do that too, just bring the kid along.
I will say historically, unless we come up with a super controversial reason for people to show up, I'm not sure that we're going to have a huge public.
We may not, and I think it's worth trying, though. I think it's worth trying to get.
I think what's critical is
But
that
we'll-
we talked
we'll
about
be
the outreach to
criticized
those
if we
different
don't.
groups.
That's
Yeah.
That's actually something that
I think that's
wanted
important.
to talk out, was outreach. There are a number of different groups in any small town, PTA, senior center, Little League parents, play groups, preschools,
Yep.
elementary schools, and the middle high school. So,
And 27 Lunenburg Facebook pages.
and the Facebook page, yep, absolutely, local libraries. So all kinds of places to reach out and try to encourage attendance and participation. In the past, we've had success with putting together a flyer and sort of distributing it to those organizations, and also relying on the existing municipal framework to reach out to
Yep.
contacts that you all have as members of the community. So we'll give it our all to get people to come and have their voices heard.
So if we go with January 5th, can we get something on the books for our third meeting with you? Would it make sense to do that tonight, or should we wait till January 5th?
Let's, I know we talked about the meeting after the January 5th meeting would be the first two concept design presentations, because they would incorporate the feedback that we get on the 5th. So ideally, the next meeting would be 2 to 3 weeks after the 5th. If we're shooting for a cost estimate, I would say 3 weeks. So maybe sometime in early February for our next meeting.
Okay. Does anybody want to, is there one day of the week that works better for you folks than another?
I'm fairly flexible. Emily?
Really, Friday? Really? If we do it Friday.
I'll do it on Sunday.
Everybody says that, and then it's like, oh, but not Friday.
Not Friday.
I'll do Friday.
We've done a
Saturday,
Friday
Sunday.
meeting. We did a Friday meeting one year, and I was like,
We did it last year, once,
When did we
one
do the
time.
emergency meeting? Wasn't that a
One time.
Sunday?
I don't know, that was,
Saturday
it
or
was
Sunday?
craziness. Do you want to stick with the Wednesday night, or do you want to, we can't, I don't want to do Tuesday night, because I would like to have it broadcast. I think that's, for this phase, and the fact that, this went through
Yep.
the length that it did to get here. So Tuesdays would be out, because Tuesdays we've got, Board of
Unless you do
Selectmen
the
meeting.
last Tuesday of
That's true.
January.
That's true.
But she requested that by time-wise, it would be best to be that first week of February.
Yeah, and that,
And
that Monday,
be-
the last Monday is like just over 2 weeks. So could we,
From January 5th to the end of January.
January,
only 2 weeks.
the last week of January would be the third week.
Well,
Sorry, January
so
26th.
The person presenting suggested early February and should be coming back with the first conceptual design. My opinion is, let's follow the professional's suggestion so that we can get a well
do
thought out
you want to
plan.
look at January 31st, February 2nd, or Monday, February 7th?
I can make it all of them.
Mondays are tough for me, I'm
Okay,
coaching
so January 2nd,
basketball.
February 2nd?
February 2nd?
Sure.
Does February 2nd work for you guys? Can you bring the groundhog? What's his name, Puscatani Phil?
I've already got them in my car.
Awesome.
And is that, it would be a usual 7? Okay.
And would that go on that same flyer you're talking about kind of deal? We'd put both things on there, do you think?
What do you think, Em?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. That way people can expect
Plan
to
ahead.
get some feedback and then plan to see that
See the feedback.
incorporated.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did, and obviously you see how well it worked, we had a little thing and a little blurb in our local newspaper. I'd like to consider doing something a little bit more prominent than what we just had, like a written, I don't know if anybody saw it. It was in a blue box. Is that something you guys could help us, like with the wording, to make sure that it's worded properly? Because was a hot mess trying to put that together, and at one point I didn't even tell anybody what it was for. I was like, join us for a meeting. And
Is that
it's
something
just-
that the Ledger would run an article, maybe?
I've asked them to do that too, and they said that somebody would reach out to us.
It'd be
after
nice to, they
Thanksgiving.
could talk with you guys and,
Yeah. And we're happy to design any sort of flyer or, which would include, wording so that,
So who's going to take the lead with the Ledger on getting an article or incorporating their flyer or wording?
I will.
Okay.
That's fine. I need to, the only thing I can say about that February 2nd date, and it's really hard for me to do right this second, is I need to verify that the room is available and figure that piece out. So once I do that, then we can.
do you want to pick 2 dates then, just in case? Is that better to do as opposed to?
February 2nd and the following Wednesday, if that doesn't work out?
We can even do
I'd rather go
February.
backwards.
We can even
I don't
do,
want to push our meetings out too far, because, if we need more at the other end, we don't want to be already at the end dates.
Karen,
I have
how
a
about
con-
February
I'll get
3rd,
to it in a minute.
Okay.
the next day? Because
Thursday, that's fine.
Because I don't think we have a lot.
What, do you meet the 2nd and 4th, or the 1st and 3rd?
Second,
So this would be the first Thursday, so you wouldn't have a meeting?
She knows.
Are we in budget season?
That's a positive.
yeah, I actually printed that out just recently.
Let's do this. Let me move forward with trying to see what we can do for that February 2nd date.
February 2nd.
If I can't make that work, I'm gonna pull together the dates that are available, the best
can-
that I can determine, and we'll go from there. Worst case scenario, we'll have to see if maybe we can use either a room in the school, or,
Library has a,
the library, that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, there's
So
a big
I
common-
have some
there's a big
backup
common in the library.
options. I just don't think it wouldn't be televised like this, so our minutes person would have to be present and. They do? All right, well, we'll figure it out. So I will work on that this week so that we can get something put together so that we can get something out to
Great.
the powers that be.
And Karen, are you going to also forward her the contacts for various organizations?
and,
Carol has her hand up.
Hold on one second, Carol.
Sure thing.
Yep. Oh, nope, go ahead. I thought I had to unmute you. The floor is yours.
All righty, I just wanted to, I was watching you on the television, and I saw you come up with the January 5th date, and I just wanted to make sure you were aware that that room isn't available on the first Wednesday of any month.
Thank you.
Because those are school committee meetings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for jumping on to say that. All right, so
That's all right.
the 4th isn't available and the 5th isn't available. What about January 6th?
What day of the week?
That's a Thursday.
Thursday.
January 6th.
What is that?
January 6th?
Oh, yes, it's fine.
You don't have something else going on that you said it like with such
Yeah, you're very
conviction of
excited.
like,
It's a big date?
Yeah, right.
so FinCom won't be meeting that night because that's the first Thursday. So let's go with that. I'm going to verify with everybody first thing in the morning.
6 is good.
Okay.
Although, what day is today? I probably can't verify first thing in the morning because it's Friday, so I may have to wait till Monday, but you'll hear from me
All right.
next week,
Great.
without a doubt.
So, ahead of that early January meeting, we will have a draft presentation of our site analysis presentation to you all for your comments, and so that we can kind of review it with you and make sure that we're accurately reflecting the existing conditions. We'll coordinate on meeting preparation so that we typically put together some activities to really get people kind of moving around and engaged. So we'll reach out ahead of time with those as well, probably through Karen. And then in terms of our site analysis and coordinating, we'd like to reach out to Public Works and Robert Oliva so that we can start to understand the maintenance capabilities, opportunities and concerns that he may have. Maybe do a walkthrough of some sites in Lunenburg or adjacent to Lunenburg, just to sort of talk through important things to keep in mind as we begin designing. And Karen has connected me with Anthony Caiozzo for the Lunenburg Skate Park so that we can begin to understand the sort of footprint that they're looking at and its immediate location. So if anybody thinks of anybody else that we
I
should
have
reach
one more
out
name to throw in there with you.
please.
So with Rob Oliva, you should probably include Rob Thompson,
Okay.
who is our recreation director.
Okay.
So it might be good just to have him in the loop of your
Great.
conversations with Rob.
Okay, great.
He'd be the one that's responsible for the programming.
Okay.
Summer programs and things like the offerings that we'd have and so forth.
All right,
Yeah.
great.
Final thought on, since I was waiting to speak about the park, skate park, because it was on the agenda, that's the last time. One thought that I have had, they're doing their own fundraising, is that I'm hoping they do get the funds to build their park, but that is also kind of a prime real estate in the park. And we should have a plan should they not have it, And again, this goes with the phasing and different things, because I think it would be, it wouldn't, we should do it, because that's what's the right thing to do, should the skate park not go through.
I think honestly, they're gonna break ground before we're ready to break ground
Yep.
on the renovations.
Okay.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll definitely reach out to coordinate with them.
Thank you.
My one concern, and the RFP was put together by our paid professionals, but
Excuse me.
let's leave it at that. I'm concerned that the process that will bring us to the point where you'll bring your two proposals to a meeting will be before this board gets a thorough vetting of your two proposals. I see that as problematic because, and I understand you just talked about, you're gonna let us know in advance once you've done your analysis as to what you see at the park, but that's not gonna include the actual proposals that you're gonna bring out to the public at that third meeting. So I don't know how we mitigate that concern, maybe we don't. just let the process play itself out. The other question I have is that, what is your understanding of the purpose for the final meeting that is scheduled and the parties it's scheduled with? If you remember.
The town manager?
Oh, the town
Town
manager meeting.
manager, and it says something else, appropriate.
And other
It's
appropriate
basically-
parties.
Basically, it says department heads is what it's saying.
Right.
That late in the process, that's why I'm wondering.
Yeah, so our understanding in terms of, I guess what we'll call the third meeting, which is sort of the two concept design reveal. Typically, we preview the two designs with the, with our municipal contact, which would be the Park Commission, and make any adjustments and then present to the sort of public at the next meeting. In terms of our understanding of the meeting with the town manager, my understanding is that that is to present the preferred option of the Park Commission, as well as the cost estimate for that preferred option. And then that the municipal process would continue as needed with that design. And that would likely be fundraising, any further design development, construction documents, construction administration.
I won't get you in the middle of it, but there's some disagreement as to who has
Okay,
control over this at that stage. But
Okay.
we'll leave that alone.
yeah, we're happy to accommodate whatever you need from us in terms of presentation materials, and to whomever Lunenburg would like in the room.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ultimately, any
Awesome.
proposal that's agreed to, we've got to get as many people on board as possible, so,
Yeah,
we're
it's-
not looking to start a battle over
Yeah.
anything, it's just,
We're trying to get consensus from the get-go, and it
yep.
results in a better project,
Okay,
so.
great.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, we really appreciate your time.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you
We'll
very
be in touch. Keep trying to close out the Zoom window, which would mean that close everything down. Nobody would be happy.
Yeah,
All right, we
no.
do have a couple of things left for us to do. So our next agenda item was actually an item with Anna on open space. And if there's some funds available through open space, and she didn't know if there were any projects we wanted to have her bring forward to the Open Space Committee. I know at the last meeting, we had mentioned some signage and some beach or water, I don't know how you want to refer to it, water.
I think it was the weeds in the water.
Yeah, weeds in the water. Weeds in the
Weeds
water.
in the water.
I can, to me, honestly, I'm good with either one of them. It would be nice, though, to get something figured out with our water situation.
And that's very open space and recreation and,
I hadn't thought of anything else. I've kind of been thinking, Marshall's kind of ruled out in terms of,
Right,
I
because
mean,
we're
we're in this,
exploring
this,
this.
so,
Yep.
I think we established a policy for another parcel of land that's, part of, under our care and custody. So it does put a little stake in that and sets that, it is a portion of land that's out of the way. So I think it's important to make sure, whether it's through this or in another capacity through DPW or whatever, it's gonna be important to get that signage over there. So I think it's a small, I can't imagine it's that costly. So perhaps there's funds there to handle both. I like the fact that the beach process there, though, I think is an important one to
yeah.
start to look at.
The water at the town beach, or the beach area there, it's one that, from what I heard, that's very concerned for next season. So for me, that kind of, like, it's a top
Yep.
priority, and I don't think we have found a way to address that yet. Yeah, we have asked the director to look into and maybe give back, what he has found, and we had asked for end of October, we haven't heard anything. So I don't know. But the town beach kind of concerns me, because I feel like we should have that addressed by next summer.
Should be squared away for next summer.
Yeah.
Do you have anything for that one, Dave?
One thing that was brought to my attention recently, in my wanderings around town and to the parks, is from the local dog owners. And Anna, through you, if open space could identify, whether it be 1, 2, or 3, relatively small pieces of property, doesn't need to have extensive parking ability or whatever to it, that we might be able to put under care and custody of the parks. Open area would be preferred, but something that could easily be cleared, grassed, and just maintained as a grassed area, and maybe at some point, if funds were available, to fence it. Because dog owners have lost almost every opportunity to exercise their dogs properly in this town. They've lost the fields on the school complex completely. We are limiting dogs being loose on the playing fields at all the parks. There is still some, and I get it. I mean, I had dogs growing up, and you have a young golden retriever that needs to burn off energy. They need to be able to run. And it's as simple as 150 feet out and 150 feet back, chasing the ball, back and forth, back and forth. So I'm not talking a formal dog park as much as I am an open space where residents in town don't have to drive all the way across town to get to them, if there were small parcels available. And use those spaces for that type of exercise for their animals. I think that's a need, and I think you would get quite a bit of response if you put out a request as to whether that would be something people are interested in and very inexpensive.
So I can bring that up and ask them, but my first question is, for this commission, is that what we want to do? Do we want to undertake a dog park right now? And is that our next step? So it's not a question bringing up to open space, I'll do it, but have we had a conversation about it? Have we had a discussion, are we going to do that? Because I have not been part of such conversation.
I think on something like that, I think we have time right now to maybe, I don't know that that's part of the funding discussion we're having right now, in terms of how to apply that money that they're
Right.
talking about.
No,
But I think it is an interesting thing to bring up to open space, and now might be the time to bring it up, because we're entering winter. Dog parks aren't going to get a lot of use in the wintertime, but it's an opportunity to maybe start that conversation of looking at small parcels around town that maybe could be served in that purpose.
But there's an exercise
You know.
year-round, so if it's an open space.
Yes, absolutely, there
they'll
is.
go to those locations and run their dogs if they're allowed to, and have, a surface that the dogs can run on. I throw it out there, I agree. The funding probably doesn't tie into this very well, but if we can bring it before open space, their chair especially, probably in the top of his head, might be able to come up with 3 locations in town without having to think about it a lot. And then it could come back to us and say, these are possible locations, what do you think? And we take it forward from there.
Okay. One other comment that I'll make, and, all our open space and conservation land is open to dogs.
And not off-leash. And that's the key to these locations. They need to be able to run off-leash.
Well, Lunenburg doesn't have a leash law. It has something
We
between,
have a restraint law.
Restraint law.
yeah. But, I have had, 2 comments, a couple of things you said. I have had dogs, and when I wanted them to get a lot of exercise, I take them out for a long walk, for a long hike, and in the lead or not, they get exercise. And if we choose a parcel anywhere in town, someone's going to be across town. So it will always, if someone is looking to exercise a dog, outside their home, outside their yard, they will always have to drive, some portion of the town will have to drive. So I'll ask them if they have suggestions. And you said 150 yards in length, like just in
Well,
terms of
the
size?
present area being used is to the right of first base at Marshall Park in particular is one that I see quite a bit of exercising of dogs being done. It's against our policy. They're not actually on the playing surface, they're in a grassed area off the edge of the field. But whatever that distance, I'd have to look at the sign on the fence, but it's 3/4 of the distance from home plate to the edge of the track and in the outfield. That's an appropriate, and it doesn't have to be that long. I mean,
Okay.
we've got little pieces and wedges of property all over town.
Okay.
I don't know how many the town actually has control over, but.
No, I was
they're-
just trying to get an
and
idea of
most people
size.
don't look at them because there's no use for them, because they're,
Small.
5,000 square feet or they're 2,000 square feet, but this would be a perfect use for that if you could park 1 or 2 cars.
We
Anyway,
have a
I
list
I
of
throw it out there.
properties. Somewhere there is a list of properties that fall under general municipal
Right.
that we could also go through as well.
Yeah, and that's,
The only one that I'm thinking of that's even cleared enough for something like that without having to go in and do a great amount of work is West Pleasant Street area. There's it's currently being used for, I think somebody hazed that field.
Yeah, it's under agricultural something or another, because that was one of the properties in town was a trade-off for taking for building the primary school down on 2A.
Okay.
But anyway, something like
So I would
that.
say bring those two
Yeah.
projects. I mean, I think we trusted your judgment enough as you're having conversations with them to, if one sounds like it's a better fit than another, to, maybe prioritize that, but.
okay.
And from a monetary standpoint, I think the beach needs to be a priority. The longer we ignore that, the more it's going to become an issue.
I think we need to have
so-
one of our meetings in the next couple of months that has a bigger discussion on the beach. I think we need to, I think we need to have some inspections done over there, and they haven't been done, so now I think we need to enforce a policy or put a policy in place that would require those. When you ask about the condition, somebody, you're with a lifeguard and you mention the beach house and, oh, I'll go in and clean up in there and do some work, and then you mention to them, well, what about the bowed walls? And they're as concerned as you are. I think we need to get some of that stuff
Yeah.
looked into
Yep.
before we have a bigger issue on our hands. So maybe a meeting in the February.
Of interest to members of this board might be next Monday night's capital planning meeting. I will be participating remotely for it, and it is on Zoom, so you'll have access to the meeting. But the DPW director will be there reviewing all of the capital projects coming out of DPW, including facilities.
I think he did put something in for the beach house, did he not?
I'm not sure. The
Okay.
last I heard was it depended on what the estimate came in at, and whether it fit the new criteria or the
Okay.
minimum 20,000. So I've heard nothing since then. The
So capital planning's minimum is now 20?
20,000, yep. I do know that last I heard, the $25,000 for a complete survey of Marshall Park, which is a good estimate. We actually, between Rob and I, we actually made some calls and we got a good estimate before that got submitted. That is on the list. Where it will fall in the priorities, I don't know.
Okay. All right, great. So I actually do have something, or before I do you need anything else from us on the open space part?
No, so my plan is to tell Open Space that we have a couple of projects that we'd like them to consider, and ask them what is that we have to do. And we'll see. I don't think, like I said before, I don't think we have, they have the money, but there is no criteria yet defined on how, so.
Okay. So I actually do have something under other business that I didn't know of before I posted this agenda. And I'm looking to see what the desires or wishes of the park commission are. So as I had mentioned in the last couple of months, the school has reopened their policy, looking at their policy on the usage of their facilities. And part of why that was reopened was because of the issue that we had over the summer and what we thought which was what we thought was a reciprocal agreement with the schools for use of their fields. As that has progressed, I went to one of their meetings last month, I believe it was, and had commented about their priority of use because their Lunenburg Youth Sports was on the same line as town-related. And I had said that my request was for them to look at that because they are not one and the same. Our two user groups are not one and the same. They did relook at that, and they came back, and the subcommittee policy is presenting some revisions to school committee on December 15th that could potentially change their priority, putting Lunenburg Youth Sports above town-related. And I guess I'm looking for some feedback from you folks on whether you want me to go in front of them and make some comments directly, as a representative of the Park Commission.
Yes.
I am concerned about that. For more reasons than just the Park Commission. The town is more than just the Park Commission. We're not the only people that use the fields. Use their facilities. So,
Yeah.
thoughts, opinions?
Yeah, I don't think that's the way to go, for them to go. It just, I can't quite put the logic on it, why, and I support, sports and everything. It's just, whenever it comes something from the town is to the general benefit of all residents, while, a specialty group may not be the case. So I can't quite understand the logic. So I would say if you could attend, and I don't know if we need a vote, and, and share our concern about that. But it would affect way more than just us.
Is there a logic that went into that? That's the only thing that I think, and I agree with the sentiment, that the general town use should rank, I think, higher than a particular group, a smaller scale group that's less than the town. But I'm wondering if I'm just trying to think through their logic, I guess, or who uses the school space, and it's...
I'm struggling to figure out the
Yeah.
logic myself on it, so...
The primary use of the school fields outside of the school is probably Lunenburg Youth Soccer and the Bengals. So I don't know if that's why they're that's just me asking the question of if that's why they're prioritizing it that way. And I don't necessarily agree with that being the priority order. But if I'm looking from the outside looking in, I'm guessing that's probably why it's prioritized that way.
Chris, I think the underlying concern is that that policy, the way it's written, covers all town activities, including use of the facilities in the school buildings. So a town entity could get preempted by a youth sports organization wanting to run some type of a meeting in a meeting space, or say the auditorium or whatever, over a town function.
Oh, I'm not necessarily agreeing with the priority order. I'm just...
Right.
them thinking through the process. I've never heard of I know Lunenburg Youth Soccer because I'm involved, I coach.
Yep.
So I've never heard of a Lunenburg Youth Soccer meeting in the auditorium or a community space. They use the fields on Saturday and practices at night during the week.
Yep.
Which, in a season in which other town entities aren't necessarily using. I'm just trying to think through what their process might have been. Not necessarily, I'm not agreeing with their process or agreeing with their policy. I'm just trying to think through what looking at it from the outside, all right, if I'm running a list of who uses our facilities and when do they use them, and you go down that list and you prioritize and say everyone gets a check mark for how often they use the facilities, there's youth groups that are using their facilities significantly more than other entities in town.
Yeah, So when I look at Marshall Park and just even considering Marshall and how it looks, if they do go through and this is the prioritization that they end up with, if that same prioritization was placed at Marshall Park, we actually do have, there are times when we have user groups that come in right after high school baseball that have to wait to use that 90-foot diamond. I mean, some of it is the Phillies, so they're an adult program, but they're a program nonetheless. And I'm seeing a conflict there. It would be my hope that the priority would be, our list would be similar to their list, if not exact to their list, instead of schools having the priority, which they have in their facilities, parks is at the top on ours. And then it follows rank after that. I'm concerned that, as they use our fields, Marshall Park is used by the high school programs.
If we were to reorganize
What we use for the Parks Commission uses, or even request for use. I mean, this year alone, I don't think, the only program I think this year that has used the school facilities, because the soccer program, the soccer camp that we had was canceled, I believe everything else was moved next to TC Passios, I believe. So that means that the only thing that we used that field for this year was our adult soccer program this fall.
It would in essence be the equivalent of, if we were to change our policy, or put our policy on par with what they're now talking about, it would be the equivalent, I think, of us saying, Little League has priority over varsity baseball and softball. So I mean, that's the issue. So I agree with the sentiment that everyone's saying. It was me processing what their thoughts are,
Yep.
And then, I think similarly, like if we were to go down and look at our parks and go down our list and say, all right, who uses it when, and everyone gets a check mark for every time they use it, and we look at, how use is there, we'll probably, our list might look different. But I think we also have to look long-term, and not just current use, but it's a policy that's going to go in place, so we need to look at it for the future too. So I think it would be important to address that, I think. Or express our concern anyway.
Looking at it, it's, for me, I look at it too. They use our fields much more than we use their fields.
Yeah.
And,
Well, let's,
go ahead.
I don't think it's theirs or ours. I think it's just a question of use. I think, I agree with you. I don't think we all agree that I think we should have someone in the meeting to represent, the town interest, to say, and to explain our logic, that, town-related activities should come ahead of youth sports. I think, I don't like, I really don't like when we start thinking of us versus them,
No, I wasn't
and
thinking
trying
in
to
the-
keep tabs on
I
usage,
wasn't
because
thinking it in that way. I was thinking it more in, they use our fields. Their requests to use our fields for their full spring season, that's significant. And I think that, it's not like we're trying to monopolize something over at the schools. We're certainly not trying to do that with the small amounts of programming that we've had. And then for this year alone, it's been just the soccer program.
Right.
So when I'm looking at that and trying to figure out some of the logic in there, I don't know. I'm just trying to do it so that there's a priority list for a reason.
Right.
And even though it may never come into play, it's there because somebody believes that at some point there may be a conflict.
I agree.
And how do we make sure that, there's an equal balance here? And I think if their policy gets changed, I think it creates an unequal balance, and I'm trying to keep some sort of equal balance
Well,
here.
I mean, the way I see it is, it's not necessarily a balance, and we might be getting too nuanced here for the sake of, but the way I see it is, we are offering the benefit to most of the town residents who are also taxpayers, you know, the town, the school represents that group, because, you know, most kids, most families in Lunenburg have. So we're prioritizing the town over a smaller group, and that makes sense. And it would make logic for the schools to do something similar. Because, you know, in the end of the day, it's all coming from the taxpayers, which is us. So that's why I think it should always be looked at it in the lens of how can we, whatever we do, to benefit the most number of residents. Because, you know, like, we may never use as much of their facilities, and that doesn't create an imbalance. It's just, it's what the need is. But I think that's where my logic goes is, you know, both the town and the school are funded through taxpayers, the majority of that. So whatever the priority list should be, it should be one that represents the largest portion of the population. So, yeah. I mean, and you had early offered to go to the meeting. Are you still?
No, so.
Are you still offering that?
No, I am still offering. I mean, if somebody else wants to go, that's fine too. I can tell you that this week I had their policy subcommittee on my agenda. This week I pulled into a parking lot to do errands with my husband and my kiddo over there, and realized as I pulled in that there was a meeting that I was supposed to be tuned into. So my fear is that I'm going to forget. So my plan, if everybody thinks that we should have put something, you know, through on behalf of the park commission, would be that I would draft an email and send it to all of them, so that if I forget and don't show up, because they run their meetings very different than ours, they only allow
10 minutes.
comments at the beginning and at the end. So, you know, if I forget, it's not like I can tune in and cross my fingers and hope that I,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Yeah. So,
No, that's awesome, yeah. And you being the chairwoman, you can draft the email.
I think, I think an email is going to, you know, that may very well suffice and express the concern that we.
I think we need to get a clear explanation for the rationale, whether they're willing to change the prioritization order or not. We need a rationale as to why they,
what they were thinking.
right.
Yep, so, and I will ask that, I will
Yeah,
I
get
will ask
understanding.
that, and then I will, you know, sort of throw our thoughts in there and see where it goes. So the way they work, and hopefully I have this correct, is that their policy subcommittee makes the revisions, then it's brought to the school committee, and there's actually 3 readings on it. So even if it gets to the 3rd meeting, if there's some concern and they decide to send it back, it starts the whole process.
Resets, yeah.
So, you know, I do want to keep tabs on it as well, because I think that as we're moving forward and their spring season is going to be upon them, I think if nothing's been settled, we need to have a bigger discussion on, you know, coming up with an agreement for their use of Marshall for the spring, so that we all are completely on the same page and understanding what the situation is.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I don't want to stretch this meeting out much longer than it already has been. But there's also a clause in there that states that other miscellaneous costs will be charged for the event. I don't remember exactly how it's worded, but it basically is in there to cover potential increased electric costs because the lights are on in a gym or field or whatever.
904 bill.
And I don't remember the other uses, but it's a generalization that has, depending on how you interpret it, a wide variety of possibilities.
And I did ask on that at the last school committee meeting that I attended, and it was things like, you know, the turf lighting, if your event generated excess trash, you know, if you filled a dumpster, they want your organization to be responsible for that. But I can go back.
They did talk about that, I think, I think they did talk about that with them, and that was what the uses were, the miscellaneous costs were
It's a
Okay,
little
my,
vague, but, you know,
Yeah.
it's hard, like, to not know what you're going.
You
in
can't
for.
spell that out. That's a tough thing to spell out.
so, my question for Anna with her concerns about school versus parks or whatever, however you want to identify it. And I'm just throwing this out there for, do I understand correctly? That going forward into next season and seasons beyond, if in fact the Parks Commission uses no school facilities on a yearly basis, year after year, yet we still have this so-called reciprocal agreement with the school department, athletics department, to use our fields at no charge, are you okay with that?
I don't know. I haven't thought on those terms.
That's fine. If you could think about that, I'd appreciate it, because, you know, that's what we're struggling with here a little bit.
Can I throw out my 2 cents on that?
Go ahead.
So I think if there is something in place, some sort of reciprocal agreement that everybody is on the same page and, you know, we can use their fields and they can use our fields, if it's available and we opt to not take advantage of it, I'm fine with their use of Marshall Park. However, if we are offering use of Marshall Park, but we can't get reciprocal use of school facilities, then I start having an issue. So who's causing the problems of, you know, is it somebody blocking our use of it? I personally feel like we were blocked from use for the soccer program over the summer.
Oh, yeah, that was extremely upsetting, especially because that was solely done on the interpretation of one person, and
Yeah.
that was
And I
not
have an
acceptable.
issue with that because we allowed all of their usage of Marshall Park this past spring, but then we weren't allowed to use it.
I think we had greater
There's a
communication
pass for
issues
one-
though.
there's a pass for it happening one time, but I think going forward, if that was to happen again, if that's what we were knowingly going into and we weren't allowed to use it, I then have an issue. Because
Right, but-
we are paying to maintain these fields.
Dave's question to me was a little different. It was, if we are not going to use ever, should we then start charging? And, you know, the first thought that comes to mind, since I had a few seconds to think about it, is, you know, we charge pretty much a nominal fee to the Little League to use our facility. It's not necessarily the cost of maintaining all the fields. So, you know, I still don't have the answer, but you know, overall, as a Parks Commission, we are not charging every organization who comes in and uses the park the cost of running the field, of, you know, maintaining the fields and so forth. So you know, and I don't know, but I think we need to be as accommodating to the school as we are to other groups in town, and even more. I do think that. Now, what happened this summer? It was just not acceptable to any, like, no, it's shameful. It's how I feel about that whole thing. Because when in question, I would say, you know, we should all err in the caution of serving the children, which were the people that were affected by that program being canceled, and that was not what, at the time, the superintendent and the facilities person determined to do. So that is not okay with me at all.
I think the interpretation of that was that it was one person that made that decision, and I think what came out of that is where we're at.
Right.
You know, with them reviewing this policy and making sure we have it in writing, that there is a clear understanding of how these all operate. You know, I think the school committee, to their credit, has immediately, once this was an issue, came to the point that it was, you know, a sad mishap, or however you want to categorize it. You know, I think everyone on all sides was disappointed. You know, as far as, you know, Dave's question, I think I'd be in agreement with what Karen said, that if the policy's in place and we elect not to use fields, then I think the policy's in place for a reason. And I think we've talked about future use and current use and so forth, so that at any moment that could change.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I mean, I think, you know, we want to be on the same page as the school committee, and have a reciprocal policy in place, whether it's used by either, you know, or not.
Right.
You know?
I just
Who
don't,
knows that the school doesn't have a baseball field of their own down the line, and then they elect to have a tournament, and they need to use a second field. You know, and there's still that reciprocal use or what have you. I mean, it's, you know, I think,
I just don't agree to, and the part that I was concerned with Dave's question is, I don't agree on necessarily having a stricter and harsher policy towards the school, as if it's a different user group
no,
than what
I
we
don't
have.
see the need to nickel and dime and
Right.
go back and forth. There's a big giant pool of money that gets swapped around town, and
I know.
it's,
That's
you
what we
know,
should avoid, right? I mean, we
Right.
should be avoiding, you know, town departments and,
needing to swap money and,
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's just.
yeah, no.
you know.
I think the reciprocal agreement's in place. Whoever agrees to, you know, elects to use it or not is
Reciprocal agreement
fine.
is not in place.
Right, it's-
I'd like to make that
Yeah,
comment
it's not
right
in
now.
place.
Well, there's a,
That's the big issue. The
so,
reciprocal agreement
it's not
does
in writing.
formally
We have,
exist.
the school committee's on record, though, as saying the reciprocal agreement is in place verbally until they formalize the policy. There is,
But-
they have actually they have gone on record to say that they will not be charging us for use of their facilities, so long as we are not charging for the other. They're on record as saying that.
And
Right.
they're also on record of saying that they would, because of how things are written today, it would need to be a case that they would need to go into a special meeting, and they only need 48 hours to, you know, to post a meeting and to have a meeting to discuss that.
And we're gonna figure out a
Specific.
way to make it work. I just, you know, I, as I was sitting typing my first draft of the email, we had talked, the last time I went before the school committee on this topic, we had talked about it, and I didn't want to not go. I didn't want to go in front of them on the 15th, or send my email if I forget to show up on the 15th, and have anything, you know, I just wanted to make sure that what you guys were thinking and saying was.
To their credit, they're standing by it thus far, and they didn't charge. We ran adult soccer this fall, and they didn't charge. In the spring, where there's a plan probably to run adult soccer in the spring. I don't know where that's going to fall, if it would be a recreation department program, or it would be a director of community schools program, to be determined. And nothing that, again, you know, in looking to get that off the ground, was never, you know, looking to step on any toes from any other groups that would have run a program like that. It just wasn't there, so the easiest access to get that off the ground was the channel that I have access to. So,
I repeat what I said in a previous meeting when we were dealing with this earlier in the year, that I think the reciprocal agreement needs to be solidified. As we can see right now, how much energy are we spending on what they are saying is the fix? Well, we'll adjust policies. Well, we put this reciprocal agreement in place, both parties agree to it, then individually, our entity and their entity fixes their policy to fit the reciprocal agreement. I personally feel that reciprocal agreement needs to be formally in place and formally voted by the school committee, as we did when we thought we were putting it in place with agreement with the school committee. That's my personal opinion.
that's the direction they're headed in, though, I think, right? I mean, that's why they're having this policy review.
Yeah, no,
And if that takes a drastic turn, and they decide to not agree with a reciprocal agreement, I think it comes back to our table, and then we're looking at it all over again.
Well, my understanding of it, and maybe yours is the correct one, my understanding was that the policy adjustments were going to take care of the issue, and the reciprocal agreement was not going to be brought forward and solidified, and I think that's a bad move.
I'm sorry, you're saying,
The reciprocal agreement, I feel, needs to be formalized between both our board and the school committee. The school
Gotcha.
committee has not endorsed a reciprocal agreement.
you
with
want to
this-
see two parties signing the dotted line, is that what I understand?
Right, and
Okay,
basically what it does is it creates a document that ties both of us to that agreement, and then a policy adjustments may already have been made that will accommodate that agreement, but as we've been talking about here for the last half hour or so, if we choose not to use their fields, but they're using the same usage, then that was our choice. It's an imbalance of use, but it still falls within the reciprocal agreement. I have no problem with that, but I.
Isn't there, I thought it was in the policy that they're going through, though, isn't it in there, that they're not charging?
correct, but if they change their,
I think Dave's concern is if they change their policy next
Well,
year.
that's what I'm saying, if they change it, then it's gonna come back to us anyway, we're gonna change it.
So right now, the way I'm looking at it is, and this has not been approved by their school committee yet, it's still gonna go through 3 readings. They could certainly send it back. Somebody on that school committee right now could say, I don't agree with this, I think it needs to go back, and it doesn't move forward, it goes back to subcommittee. But if this does go through, I'm not looking at that as their reciprocal agreement, or what they're proposing as an agreement for our usage is different from what we're offering them as an agreement for their usage. And I think it needs to be the same. And if they keep their priority use, if they change their priority use, and we keep ours the same, then without a doubt, it needs to go into a formal agreement. Now we're just not equal with what we're the give and take. So I'll put together something. Who wants to volunteer to read it once I put it together? Chris will read it. I will get it over to them, so if I, forget to show up at the meeting, we have that in, and then we'll go from there. All right,
Sounds great.
cool. Does anybody else have any public comment? The public, any comments? You're good? Dave, you good?
Yep, I think I am. I already announced that, capital planning might be anybody interested in DPW projects, and specifically a couple of possible parks projects that would, may show up on the capital plan. Tune in Monday evening at 5:30. That will be on Zoom.
So
Be available on Zoom.
Okay, January 6th is the target right now for our next meeting. It would be great, I think, if we could see if we could get by without another regular meeting in January, if we just went with that January 6th. And then our next meeting, we'll target, I realized after I wrote it down, and the chair of the school committee came on, February 2nd, which is the next date we were targeting, that's also the first Wednesday of the month, so they're going to be using this room. So I'll probably target February 3rd there, and then we probably will need to have, either after the presentation on February 3rd or later in February, have a regularly scheduled meeting, because we're going to need to start ironing out beach stuff for next season.
Come February would be beach time. Yeah, I mean, well, you meant, we were talking about the beach, I mean, is that something we would want to start to talk about in January, or no?
Yeah, January, February timeframe, even February.
I just, if we
is
skip
fine.
a January, if we skip a meeting at the end of January, then we're at the end of February. And we're 2 months away from,
That's true. All right, I'll put some thought into that and see. I mean, if we need to do something at the end of January with a small agenda, we certainly can.
so I would propose, if we did something in January, that it would be solely focused on,
Where
That
do
one
we
task.
stand on field usage fees for the spring season? Because those have to be in place by February 1st.
So, we're too late for that. It's gonna be, well, it would have had to have been, even before that, because, these groups already opened their registrations for next year. I would assume Little League is open for the spring for registrations. I feel like it was,
did we change that form?
we need to, I have a email out to Rob Thompson to try to come in and sit with them. We need to pull all of our forms that were put together and verify every single date on there, because I don't know where the typo came in. Whether the typo came in on my side, or it's in a document that I have, or whether it was over on the rec side, but we need to verify all those. So no, I have not quite finished verifying that. And I also want to figure out a way to get, I think, as we, most of our motions they're policy related. All of them are policy related. I think there needs to be a central,
On the surface,
registry
I
of
can't tell if
policy.
registration's open for Little League yet or not.
So my concern, Dave, with changing, we're at $20 a head right now. First of all, we changed last year. My concern with changing it, especially increasing it we're in December, is that we're awfully close, if not past, where they've already opened up registration, where they've already set their usage fees for the spring.
Okay.
That would be my
I mean, we've
concern.
talked about this before, that we need to have these hammered into a calendar so that we don't
Yes.
miss these opportunities. And
Yep.
I'm not saying we needed to increase them, it's just review them.
Yep,
And know
yep.
that when their registration opens, the information is accurate for the coming season.
Correct. You adding to that? Okay, quickly. I want to go home.
Chris Menard, 672 Page Street, is, what am I, the vice chair of the Finance Committee. We've asked the DPW director to present his budget to you, to this commission, so that should be factored into this schedule in that January, February timeframe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Karen, I forwarded you the budget season schedule while we were sitting here in the meeting.
Oh, I was gonna say you
That came out
did.
today from town manager.
Okay, okay.
I have one last thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I just wanted to bring up an update on Marshall Park, just so that the commission is aware. The portable toilet is gone after an additional call from the Board of Health to tell them to get it out of there before we lock the gates on that side. That prompted them to get it out very quickly.
Duly noted.
And the dumpster is gone from Marshall. Last I checked, the
Great.
dumpster is not gone from McNally Field.
Okay.
So that's
I'll
just an
try to
update
drive
on
by McNally tomorrow.
Good news about Marshall, though.
Anybody else have anything?
Just so the commission knows also, I mentioned to the police chief at Capital Planning last week of the issue with the gatherings at Marshall Park in the mornings during the week, and they were going to make sure that patrols go in there and kind of take a look around
Okay,
if that continues to happen.
okay,
That's it, I'm done.
great.
What are they doing that's illegal?
Oh, I'm not saying it's illegal, it's just that they're hanging in there, and, you know, the comment was that there's being trash left on the ground. That's the biggest thing. And I told the
Okay.
chief, I said, they're not so far causing any trouble. It's just that, you know, it's a formula for trouble, and the parks are formally closed for, you know, organized activities.
But hanging out is not an organized activity.
No,
There.
but in that space, I mean, we can secure that space and they'll still have access to the park, so that's all we're doing.
Yeah. Okay.
No, do you have something to add?
Well, I mean, the parks are being used by teenagers. They're going there before school. It's the comment. You know, I just, I like when the parks are used.
I don't think they're gonna kick them out. I don't think.
The only issue is trash. Trash is getting left behind. That's the only issue. I think.
Yeah.
I think just driving through and making sure everything's
Yep.
hanging out good
And
over
another
there.
reason for securing the gate on the back side of the 90-foot diamond, because I can remember over the years, very deep tire marks across the outfield of the 90-foot diamond because they were able to gain access to the field. with
Was there a Pontiac? Was there a Pontiac?
Yeah.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn at 9:23?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned at we need a vote on that.
Aye.
I don't even know how to do it now, because we,
Just all in favor?
everybody in favor of adjourning at 9:23, say aye.
Aye.